November 13th through the 19th is Transgender Awareness Week. I want to create this video to better educate individuals about how to care for our transgender community. Because if we create that safe environment, if we create more educated individuals, we break stigma and we better enable the transgender community to feel safe, because the mental health of an individual relies heavily on their environment, on how safe their environment is. If the environment is safe, accepting, and educated, the mental health of the individual blooms. If it's rejecting, discriminating, and stigmatized, the mental health of the individual declines. So it's very important for us to create a safe space and be more supportive and educated of our transgender community members. So if you're not familiar with the term transgender refers to a person whose sex assigned at birth does not match their gender identity or expression. And it's important to acknowledge and accept and support that and respect it, because an individual may be born with a certain sex, or certain anatomy, a certain biology, and they don't have to stay with that. If they feel that their gender identity or expression does not match that, they have every right to do that, because it all contributes into their identity, into how they live in this world and exist in this world. A couple of other terms I would like to make sure that are out there and to educate you upon is cisgender. Cisgender describes a person whose gender identity aligns with their assigned sex at birth. Gender diverse is an umbrella term that describes individuals with gender identities and or expressions that vary from expected developmental norms. This includes those who identify with multiple genders or with no genders at all. That's also a possibility, and that's also something that must be respected. Gender dysphoria is a mental health phenomenon that can occur in the transgender community. While not all experience it, it is something exclusively in the transgender community, and it's a psychological distress that results from an incongruence between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity or expression. And this can cause a lot of psychological distress, and it's important for us to be educated upon that this is something that an individual already faces, aside from the way society can be and how harsh society can be and ignorant. Gender expression is the outward manifestation of a person's gender, which may or may not reflect their inner gender identity based on societal expectations. So demeanor, style, accessories, grooming, voice and speech, physical characteristics all fall underneath that as examples. Gender identity is a person's inner sense of being and chosen gender identification. It's what they choose. So female, male, non-binary, a combination of the two, or something completely different. Non-binary is a term used by some individuals whose gender identity is neither female or male. Sex or gender assigned at birth is a traditional designation of person based upon anatomy and or biology at birth. Sexual orientation describes the types of individuals toward whom a person has emotional, physical, and or romantic attachments. So these are just some terms that touch base on that, because it's very important for us to be educated upon that terminology and the differences in that terminology, to make sure that our vernacular isn't loose and careless whenever we are having these conversations, whenever we're trying to show up for support, whenever we're trying to be allies, and whenever we are listening to conversations from the transgender community or any other member of the LGBTQIA community. Some statistics that fall into this and that specifically pertain the transgender community go as follows. A shocking 50% will have had at least one suicide attempt by their 20th birthday. That's an unnecessarily high number. And that is a number that is very real, though, because we're not creating a safe enough environment for the transgender community. We need to look out more for our transgender community. This needs a change. 42.2% report being prevented from using their preferred name at school. 59% have been denied access to restrooms consistent with their gender identity or expression. 90% have been discriminated against and have heard negative remarks about their gender expression and identity. 90%. 73% believe that they will be treated differently by medical personnel due to their gender identity and or expression. And this shocking statistic can even apply to other areas where identification is needed and a person is at a different stage or different level within their transgender process, whether they choose to transition completely or whether they just choose to identify differently. There are so many occurrences where their gender identity isn't taken seriously, it's not taken into account, and they are treated differently because of the fact that they have a different gender identity. And that is unnecessary. That is so wrong on so many levels because of the fact that a person can't even feel safe saying who they are, introducing themselves to the world. That has to change. 75% of individuals in the transgender community feel unsafe. 75%. That is 3/4 of the population. Imagine 3/4 of a population in your specific community, in your specific identity boxes, in your specific construct. Like, let's say if you're a female, imagine 75% of females feeling unsafe. If you're a male, imagine 75% of males feeling unsafe. If you identify in another community, imagine that specific community being covered by 3/4 of individuals feeling unsafe. We need to create a safe environment for the transgender community. I cannot emphasize that enough. 35% have been physically assaulted, 78% have been harassed, and 12% have been sexually violated. And these are just statistics from those cases reported. And that's another element in reporting as well. Not only can it factor in that the individual feels unsafe to go forward and reach out to report in the first place, there are cases where an individual is trying to reach out and trying to report and trying to seek help or seek justice, and the people who are doing the reporting for them discriminate against them and completely disregard their voice. That's just unacceptable. There is a transgender suicide hotline that has fortunately been created to create a safer space for specific needs of a transgender individual. The number is 877-565-8860. This number can be useful if you know somebody who's in the transgender community who is feeling suicidal. If you yourself are in the transgender community and you're feeling suicidal, please reach out and get help. Your life matters so much. The number again is 877-565-8860. It matters not what someone is born, but what they grow to be. It's so important for us to not be scrutinizing and be so hell-bent on sticking to a very closed-minded construct and a norm that's seen around this world, a heteronormative perspective, goggles that only stick to people fitting into these boxes, and that's what must be done. It's important for us to acknowledge how diverse every individual is, how diverse everyone's identity is, and specifically there's so much diversity even within the transgender community, and it's important for us to acknowledge who they are becoming, who this individual wants to be, who this individual wants to be referred as. It's important to acknowledge those and create a safe space for that, because the transgender community deals with a lot of discrimination, and that discrimination results in a heightened vigilance. A lot of stress responses are triggered. There's anticipatory anxiety that develops inside of somebody in the transgender community because they feel like they always have to be on and alert in order to keep themselves safe. Depression can manifest, dissociative episodes can manifest, suicidal thoughts, risk-taking behaviors that grow into borderline personality disorder, PTSD, substance abuse disorders. It's so important for us to make sure that we don't let someone fall into that. We don't let someone fall into that darkness because of our ignorance. We need to make sure that nobody falls victim to our ignorance and our inability to be compassionate and accepting in this world. Being transgender is not a choice, it's not a phase, it's not a lifestyle, it's not a trend, it's not a threat to anyone. We need to end the stigma. So it's important for us to collectively create a safe space. When someone who identifies as transgender is surrounded by a supportive community, their mental health improves and their livelihood therefore improves. So what can you do? You can call people out for being transphobic. Don't be afraid of doing that, because those words are harmful, and you can ensure that you aren't also one of those individuals using those harmful, ignorant words. If someone chooses to come out to you as trans, this means that they trust you. Honor that trust and allow that person to come out on their own terms. Don't out this person. You have no right to out this person even after they come out to you. You must respect that boundary. If someone is choosing a certain name or choosing a certain identity to go by, do not contradict that. Respect their expression and don't ask ignorant questions like, what's your real name or what is your real gender? Refer to them as they identify and respect it. Show your support by showing up as an ally. You need to do that. It's very important to do that. You need to also respect pronouns that people prefer. So while names may be one thing, gender expression may be another thing, sexual identity may be another thing, it's important to also respect a person's pronouns. If you don't know what pronouns they prefer, ask. Ask with genuine compassion and consideration. You can simply ask, what are your preferred pronouns? And stick to it and respect their pronouns. Respect people's pronouns. Don't assume. You can also make sure that you understand this. This is something very important. Transgender people don't owe you an explanation. They don't owe you any explanation for why they identify the way they do, who they identify as, or their story. Don't force somebody to owe you an explanation, especially in the transgender community. Just simply respect their existence. Simply respect them. Create a safe space for them. Create a safe zone for them to be who they are. And if you are transgender and you're watching this, remember this: you are worthy, you are loved, you are capable, you are amazing, you are valid, and you deserve respect. Your life matters. Thank you.